Life has a way of blindsiding you when you least expect it. At 38, I thought I had everything figured out, a stable marriage of nearly 2 decades, 3 wonderful kids, and a modest home we were slowly fixing up. Sure, we had our share of problems like any other couple, but I never imagined I'd be where I am today. My wife and I met back in college. We were both young and inexperienced in relationships, which made our connection feel even more special. She was studying business, and I was working on my engineering degree. We clicked instantly, and within a year, we were living together. Fast forward through the years, and we built what I thought was a solid life together. The last couple of years have been tough, though. Between trying to renovate our old Victorian house, managing our mounting credit card debt, and both working overtime to make ends meet, we barely had time to breathe. The kids needed attention with their schoolwork and activities, and somewhere along the way, we stopped really talking to each other. I noticed the changes gradually. My wife had been struggling with her health and weight for years, and nothing seemed to help. Her confidence hit rock bottom, and instead of being there for her like I should have, I retreated into my own world of video games and work. She buried herself in her phone, constantly scrolling through social media. This spring, things started changing more noticeably. She began going out more with her friends, particularly with Jasmine, who'd recently divorced. They'd hit the local bars and clubs while I stayed home with the kids. I told myself it was good for her to have some fun and rebuild her confidence. But deep down, something felt off. The first red flag came when my friend Theo mentioned seeing my wife at the Maple Grove, a dance hall in the next town over. He said she seemed pretty close with some guy on the dance floor. When I brought it up, she dismissed it, saying some random guy had tried to dance with her, but she'd pushed him away. I wanted to believe her, needed to believe her, so I let it slide. Then came the secretive behavior with her phone. She'd angle it away from me, change her passwords frequently, and step outside to take calls. One night in late summer, while she was sleeping, I happened to see her phone notification light up. I knew her password from watching her type it earlier that day, and against my better judgment, I looked. What I found shattered my world. Not only had she been lying about that night at the Maple Grove, but she'd been carrying on online relationships with 2 men from different countries. It started innocently enough on Instagram, some guy named Marcus sending her compliments, which led to conversations on Skype. Within weeks, it had turned inappropriate. Then there was another guy, David, who she met the same way. But the worst revelation was yet to come. While going through her messages with Jasmine, I discovered something that made my stomach turn. During a weekend music festival in Pine Ridge, where I thought she and Jasmine were having a girls' getaway, she met up with someone from our own community, a married business owner who lived just across town. I sat on this information for weeks, trying to figure out what to do. We had the kids to think about, a house that was half renovated, and barely enough money to keep up with our bills. Plus, I still loved her. How do you just throw away 20 years of marriage? Finally, after getting my mother to watch the kids one Saturday, I decided to confront her. She'd just returned from her weekend business course, and I calmly asked her to sit down with me. What followed was a long night of painful conversations. That night was both the hardest and most honest conversation we'd had in years. There was no screaming or throwing things, just raw pain and truth coming out after months of lies. She broke down and admitted to the online relationships, trying to explain how the attention from these men made her feel wanted again. She swore nothing physical had happened with the local businessman, Tom, during the festival weekend. According to her, he'd come to her room to talk, tried to kiss her, but she'd stopped it there. I wanted to believe her. Maybe needed to believe her. After all, we had built a life together, and despite everything, I still care about her. She promised it was just a stupid mistake born from low self-esteem and feeling disconnected from me. She didn't blame me directly, but mentioned feeling like I had stopped finding her attractive because of her weight struggles. We agreed to try marriage counseling. The next few weeks felt like we were actually making progress. She became more affectionate, started sharing her phone passwords freely, and we spent more time together as a family. Our intimate life improved too. Sometimes I'd catch her just looking at me with tears in her eyes, and she'd tell me how sorry she was. But there was still this nagging feeling in my gut that wouldn't go away. Something about her story didn't add up, especially regarding that festival weekend. I noticed she'd delete certain text conversations, claiming she was just cleaning up her phone. The doubt kept eating at me. It all came crashing down after our second counseling session. Maybe it was the safe environment, Or maybe she couldn't carry the guilt anymore, but she finally told me the complete truth. Not only had she slept with Tom during the festival, but she met him twice afterward for what she called just kissing. The worst part? She had tried to contact him again just days after our initial confrontation about her online affairs. I remember sitting there in the counselor's office, feeling like someone had sucked all the air out of the room. I didn't yell or storm out. I just sat there, completely numb. Here was the woman I'd loved for almost 20 years, the mother of my children, admitting she had multiple affairs, both emotional and physical. She kept trying to explain herself, saying she knew she'd been selfish and stupid. She promised she'd do anything to fix our marriage, to make me trust her again. But how do you rebuild trust after learning your partner had inappropriate relationships with 4 different men over just a couple of months? This wasn't a drunken one-night mistake. These were conscious decisions she made repeatedly. The next few weeks were a blur. I went through the motions of daily life, went to work, helped the kids with homework, continued the house renovations. But inside, I was completely lost. Every time she smiled at me or tried to be affectionate, I'd remember her messages to these other men, and my stomach would turn. I started talking to my best friend, Marcus, about everything. He'd been through a divorce himself and understood the complicated mix of emotions I was dealing with. Part of me wanted to fight for our marriage, for our kids, for our shared history, for the financial stability we'd both need. Our house renovation was only halfway done, and neither of us had any savings to fall back on. Plus, I worried about how my wife would handle a divorce mentally. Would she be able to care for our kids properly if she fell into depression? But another part of me knew that staying would slowly destroy whatever was left of my self-respect. After weeks of internal struggle and many conversations with close friends, I finally found the courage to make a decision. Last Thursday, I sat her down and told her I wanted a divorce. She didn't seem surprised, almost like she'd been expecting it. Instead of fighting for a marriage or trying to convince me otherwise, she just kept repeating, "Nothing I say will change anything," whenever I try to get her to talk. Telling our families was the next hurdle. My mother already knew everything. She'd been my rock through this whole mess. But my wife was reluctant to tell her parents the real reason for our split. These were people who had been like second parents to me for nearly 2 decades. They'd helped us financially countless times, loved our kids deeply, and always treated me like their own son. When we met them last weekend to drop off 2 of our kids for the school break, we gave them a watered-down version of events. We talked about growing apart and wanting different things. I watched their faces fall with disappointment, and it killed me to lie to them. But my wife had begged me not to reveal the truth, and I agreed, partly to keep things civil for the divorce process. Living in a small community makes everything more complicated. Word travels fast, and I don't want our kids dealing with playground whispers about their mother's affairs. So we've decided to keep the real story within our closest circle. To everyone else, we're just another couple who couldn't make it work. Now we're dealing with the practical side of separation. The house needs to be sold, but first, we have to finish the renovations to get a decent price. We both need to find affordable apartments. We've agreed on shared custody, 1 week with me, 1 week with their mother. But I'm pushing for the kids to have their legal address registered with me. After what she did, paying her child support feels like adding insult to injury. My friends keep telling me I'm handling this too calmly, that I should be angrier. Maybe they're right, but getting angry won't change what happened, and it won't help our kids adjust to their new reality. Still, I won't let my desire to keep things civil stop me from fighting for what's fair in the divorce. The hardest part is accepting that the woman I trusted completely for 20 years isn't who I thought she was. Sometimes I look at old photos of us and wonder if any of it was real. Other times, I catch myself missing her, not the person she turned out to be, but the person I thought she was. I know divorce is the right decision, but that doesn't make it easier. Every time I look at our kids, I feel guilty about breaking up their home. Then I remind myself that staying in a marriage without trust would teach them the wrong lessons about relationships and self-respect. I don't know what the future holds. The legal system here tends to favor mothers in custody battles, but I'm prepared to fight for my rights as a father. My lawyer says I have a strong case for primary custody, especially given the circumstances, but nothing is certain. For now, I'm taking it 1 day at a time. Some days are better than others. Sometimes I wake up feeling strong and certain about my decision. Other days, usually when I'm alone in our half-finished house, I question everything. But deep down, I know there's no going back. You can fix a lot of things in a marriage, but once trust is shattered this completely, trying to rebuild it would mean losing yourself in the process. The woman I married might still be in there somewhere, beneath all the lies and betrayal. But I can't spend the rest of my life trying to find her again. My kids need a father who respects himself, and I need to rediscover who I am outside of this marriage. It's not the ending I wanted for our story, but sometimes the bravest thing you can do is write a new beginning for yourself. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.